friends, welcome back to my channel, and for today's vlog we are talking about World Watercolor Month. The month of July has been deemed as World Watercolor Month. There is a prompt available, and I should put it here, somewhere here, so you guys can see it, and just go and check out their channel at Doodle Art, I think is it. I will link everything in the description below so you guys can get to it. I have an Altoid in my mouth. So in celebration of World Watercolor Month, I thought a great idea is to talk about how I store my watercolor paints, at least the majority of them, and how I store them and the different palettes I use, because you can be very creative regarding your watercolor storage and your watercolor palettes, and I want to share that with you today. So maybe give you guys some ideas on what to do with your watercolor tubes and your watercolor paints, and you don't necessarily have to go out there and buy a watercolor palette to have a watercolor palette. So let me share that with you. I think the best place for me to start is this. Okay, so this is a board. Yeah, it's a board I stuck to the wall, and what I did is I used my glue gun. You can still see the glue gun drops here, and I glued little pins, small little clothespins. There's an empty one right there. Glued these small little clothespins onto it, and I used that to hold my student grade watercolor paints. As you can see, I have a few of them, and this is where I keep the student grade watercolor paints. I think it's good, you know, kind of reminds me that I have way too much of this stuff, so I don't need to buy any more, because if I'm not seeing it, I don't think I have it. But now that I'm seeing it, I know I have it, and I know I don't need to get any more. So these are the other watercolor tubes. These are the M-grams, the one Jackson paint that I have in neutral tint, and some of my Marie's watercolor paints got hard, so I basically tried to tape it up, and I leave it in the tube and I put it in here. But these I can reconstitute again. I just crushed them up and put them in the and reformulate them again so they can be of use. So I have M-gram here. I have the M-gram 5 essential set, and I have the Daniel Smith 5 essential set also. Here you go. Why doesn't he want to focus? Hi. Yeah, so here he has the Daniel Smith 6 essential colors, and I do have 2 others. I have the quinacridone burnt ochre, and I have another one somewhere. So yeah, I have some Daniel Smith paints, some M-gram, Delaroni. These ones are the Delaroni gouache that I have yet to use. So I do have some paints here. I'm just putting them up, actually. That's what I'm doing right now, putting them back in the container. So yeah, I keep them in a little, this container here. That's really cool. Case I have are actually, now we're going to be talking about the palettes, how I store my watercolor, what my watercolor palettes are. I have this is just a normal wooden box, craft box, and this is where I store my handmade watercolor paints. Oops, oh, there's a color that came out. The quinacridone violet came out. Yeah, so there's this is a normal wooden box you buy at your local craft and hardware store. My husband varnished it for me outside, and I had to kind of kidnapped it to get it back for me, because I told him I didn't want it to look too professionally done. I wanted it to look very old. So let's work with the watercolor paints that I have. Now, of course, you guys see me have the Paul Rubens, the Crayolas, the Starry Nights colors. I have those palettes. I have the Artist Isle palettes, and stuff like that. So these are just a few of them. I mean, I'm sure you guys know what those look like because I've featured those before on this channel. I should get those, but I'll get them shortly. This one is from Artistic Isle. She's a handmade watercolorist. These are her colors, and this is how I store her paints. She actually sent her paints. When you buy a few of her paints, she sent it with a palette. So it's kind of cool. I think I buy a collection, and these are very affordably priced too. They're really very nice. This is from the Derwent Intense set. Derwent, I think, store a lot of their watercolor paints like this in these kind of palettes here. So this one is for the Derwent Intense, but I think the Derwent graphic tins and the Derwent Neo colors and the Derwent watercolor paints are stored in the same container, so it's the same thing. This one is empty. Well, no, it's not. This one has in the Daniel Smith paints from my Daniel Smith tubes that I have 4 spots open. Really cool. This is the Sennelier paints. I think I have 14 colors in here, which is awesome. So yeah, so awesome. A beautiful set of paints. So these are the Kuretake metallic colors. This is the starry colors, the gem color, and the clear, and the pearl colors. How I normally store these is in the original container, how they normally come, and they come in these boxes. And what I did is I cut the flaps of the boxes of either side off so I could easily slide it in and out. See? Cool, huh? And then I tape the swatch to the bottom. I know, super awesome. The only thing is I have to be careful when putting back in, but that's really cool. And I did for all 3 of them. These are their metallic color set. This is the Sume-E ink. This doesn't come with a color, but it comes in a box too. And what I did is that I taped the swatch for him inside the box, and it comes like this. I just keep them in the original color. Okay, this is the Crayola set. Very nice, very nice, very nice indeed. Got it, Paul Rubens. I'm just going through this rather fast because you guys would have seen me use this. So I normally store this in the original tin. This is where I keep my Winsor & Newton China set. Also the Derwent Intense paints. This set I fashioned it to hold at least 52 paints. So yeah, this is really, really awesome. Interesting, the Derwent Intense paint started to split here. I think this is the fuchsia. Yeah, they started to split, this one at least. But it doesn't affect the color. And the Winsor & Newton China. Some of these needs to be refilled, but I just don't refill them. I'm trying to empty it out, so yeah. I keep this in this big one here. And here is the Artist Love Paints. Yeah, you see, I'm going through it rather fast, guys, because it's just necessary to show you guys how I store my watercolors. Yeah. So they're kept in cake form. The swatch, really cool. Okay, so the other one we're looking at is, we're going through this kind of fast because really you guys have seen me use this. It's where I become more inventive with my watercolor palettes. This is actually it's where the dentist used to store teeth in. It's some old little palettes. This is where I keep the Sargent Art. So instead of having all the little teeth in a row, I kind of use my soldering tool and took out the dividers for some of them so I could hold at least, and I turned it into a 12 palette. That's really awesome. This is where I keep the Sargent Art. This container here, I believe this container came with pins in it, and it's plasticky. And this is where I keep the Van Gogh. I have another one where I keep the Jackson I think I have another empty one somewhere. Because I buy pins, and the pins come in these, and I have several of them, so I just basically keep them to hold pins in, and these can hold at least 6 half pan, and this is a pipette. I just cut the bulb off the pipette and use some glue to glue it together, and then I use it in the middle as an extra water, as a little pan, and it holds 6 half pans, or 3 full pans and 3 full pans and 3 half pans, so very comfortably. That's really cool. I'm going through this kind of fast, guys. So these are my more unconventional watercolor storage. This is where I keep the Stylex watercolor. This is actually, I think it cost like $1.50. It's similar to the it's from Basic. You can actually see the previous label in there. A Basic washable watercolors, and it's a 12 set. And all I did is I took out the cakes and I put my Stylex in there, and it holds the Stylex. And then here's another one. I believe this is a 18 set. The same thing, I took the cakes out, clean up real well, and this is where I keep the Marie watercolor paints. And then we have this one here. I believe this is also a Basic product, but this one, unlike this one here, came with the palette itself on a little plastic, like a little plastic, white little plastic thingy. And so I took that out, and I put in my own little, I put these, this is actually bottle covers, guys. Before I got these, I used bottle covers. I think I went to a restaurant and collect some of these bottle covers. So cut them in half, cut them off because I thought they were too big for the palette itself. And this is where I keep the A+ watercolor palette that I had. I think I donated the A+ watercolor palette already to a friend. And for the colors, the watercolors that were in these, I donated. And the watercolor cakes that I took out, I also donate those. More unconventional watercolor storage. Altoid small. This is actually an Altoid tin I bought because I love Altoids. Actually, I do love Altoids. Seriously, strong mints. And I saw this little small one. After enjoying the mints, I use its container as a watercolor palette. Here's another Altoid. After I enjoyed the mints, this is where I keep my Sennelier. Well, these are Schminke Senneliers. These are Schminke paints. This is where I keep my Schminkes. I have Schminke half pans. I think they're gorgeous. This is where I keep the M grams. Well, you saw where I kept the Daniel Smith and the Derwent. And then I have this. This is what I got. These are some Van Gogh paints that I got. This reminds me of the pill bottle for people who to remind them to take their pills. I think that's cute too. Okay, so these are all my empty palettes that I have. Okay. This is not an empty palette, guys. This is actually an Altoid mint. This is what I've been eating. You want a mint? Mint, anyone? Don't you seriously love Altoids? Yeah. So whenever I see that at the store, I usually buy a tin. This is a mint. This is an empty palette that was given to me by my stepmom. She went to a birthday party and they had some mints in this little thing here. I thought it was really cool. So I like the little container. I used to keep the Daniel Smiths in here, but then I decided to put them in the Derwent. This is where I used to keep my handmade watercolor paints before I got the wooden container. So this is now just an empty 12 pan. This was where I used to keep my Winsor & Newton before I got the tin pan. Yeah, You can still see some stainage in there. But for the most part, I clean it out quite well. So now I just have this. This was where, what I kept in here? I think this was where I first kept the Marie's. I think the other one that the Marie's is in, I used to keep some other, was empty. And I needed to clean out the Marie's one. So I put the Marie's in the empty one, and I cleaned this one out. And so I just have this one here now. But yeah, this is where the Marie's used to be. So see why I said I clean out the cakes? Has the glue and everything still in it, because it's kind of hard to come out. So yeah. This is another traditional palette. It has the little insert extra palette mixing area. Pretty cool. I think this holds 18 paints. I have yet to put paints in this though. The final one, I think this one here is where I had some Crayola paints, but I donated those as well too. And I just kept this because, as you can see, I could use it with pans and different ways to keep watercolor paints. And the final thing that I have here to put watercolor paints is this. This is actually a little container that came with some chocolates. I thought it'll make an interesting watercolor palette, so I just hold on to it until I could get some watercolor paints to put in it, but I'm not sure about it yet. So yeah. So now I make a lot of my own watercolor paints. So in the event, I make some colors. I have some full pans, not a lot of them. I have the little half pans. So I do have some of those where I can make my watercolor paints. I have this. Could also put watercolor in these. These come with some little, metal tins here. And you can just close them together. Or if you, and it locks, it actually does lock. See, it does lock. So that's really cool. Or you can use these separately, and you can put the watercolor paints in there and then just close it and lock it together. So I think that's really cool. And then I have these pans here. I'm sure you saw these also. Not this one, but I have bigger. Yeah, so I keep watercoloring these as well. Yeah, guys, you can see you can be very inventive and very innovative when it comes to your watercolor palettes. You don't have to go out there, and even though the tin pans are not very expensive, I think they're like maybe US dollar, about $4 or $5 US for a watercolor tin pan, a 12 set watercolor tin pan. If you honestly don't have, because $4 or $5 US is, you know, 8 to 10 Belize dollars. So if you really don't have that to spend, and you're in a country like mine who really doesn't facilitate that, you can be very inventive. And you know, when it comes to your watercolor palettes, even if you don't have watercolor half pans, even if you don't have the half pans, you can get these. These are for people who make their own makeup. They're actually the people who make their own makeup containers. So, and these are way cheaper than the half pan. I mean, the half pan, you know, you can get a pack of 50 for like $7, which is not bad. But 50 of these are like $2. Especially this one, it's like $2 for 50 of these, and 50 of these are like $3. So, you know, and you can be very inventive, and these can hold a lot of watercolor paint, especially this one, which is really good for people who have big brushes. And this is almost equivalent to a half pan. So yeah, so you can be very inventive with your watercolor paint. All in all, guys, happy World Watercolor Month. Hope you guys are out there being creative and innovative when it comes to watercoloring. And as always, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And as always, stay safe, stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.